Ben McKee, West Rucker, Go Vols 24/7 here with our full court press inside of Thompson Bowling Arena at the Food City Center on the Summit floor after Tennessee beats down Texas A&M 86-51. It was complete and utter domination for Tennessee tonight, which is a good sign because they were completely dominated in College Station, and they reversed the course in a big way. And to me, it started on the offensive glass. Well, not the offensive glass, the rebounding glass in general.
Yeah, to me, Ben, as much as anything, this to me was a game where Tennessee's played really well at times this season. But even when Tennessee's been at its best at times this season, you haven't quite had everything in sync. And for about the last 25 minutes or so of that game, you wondered what would happen if, Zakai Ziegler ran the floor the way he can, if Connect scored the way he can, if Adu and Awaka play the way they can play in the paint, if the guys swarm and play defense. That's what happens. 86-51 with a 49-24 second half is what happens. I think 50-33 or something like that on the glass.
I think it was 50-35.
It was an absolute, domination there, and that's what A&M does. That A&M is not a great basketball team, but it is a well-coached basketball team. It plays exceptionally hard, and it is on the glass. And Tennessee kept A&M from doing that.
Absolutely. It was 50-33, according to the stats up there above us. That's why I turned around for those wondering what I was doing and looking like a dummy inside of here. But dominated A&M on the glass. That is a great thing to see, not only for that particular game because of how it went in College Station, but that's something that everybody is kind of questioning. Will that bite them in the butt when it comes time for the NCAA tournament? So it was good to see them iron out those kinks. Need to prove that they can be consistent doing it, and they certainly have some big tests coming up. But also, we'll get to Zakai Ziegler and Dalton Connect, but within winning the rebounding battle, you needed Jonas Adu and Tobe Awaka to lead the charge. They did that individually. Jonas was terrific on both ends of the floor. Rick said that when he's that aggressive, he's as effective as any player in the country, and you saw why tonight. But to me, I continue to ask a million questions in the media availabilities about it, but this emergence of this two big lineup is starting to look really effective, and you and I talked about it on the podcast. Just gives Tennessee another way in which it can win, which is a great thing to have going into March.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it because I was going to bring it up anyway because, there are a lot of us who, myself included, who said all offseason, stop playing two bigs, stop playing two bigs, stop playing two bigs. Your offense isn't good enough. Play four guards. And that's what Tennessee's done for most of the season, and it's worked more than it hasn't, but it also exposes a couple things that have not been an issue for this Tennessee team in the past. And now, oddly enough, when they go back to that two big lineup at times, they're playing some of their best ball of this season. I think it's still kind of across the pond, they call it horses for courses. Like you need certain types of guys for certain games, and there will be games where you want to go four guards. There will be games where you want to go two bigs. But adding that pitch, it's like a great baseball pitcher just all of a sudden adding like a third or fourth wipeout pitch to the arsenal. It does a lot, and it gives teams even more to prepare for.
Absolutely, and again, it's not something that Tennessee's going to play with a ton. It needed to go to that lineup tonight, just like it needed to do so in the second half at Missouri because they were searching, trying to find something. Tennessee got off to a real quick start on the scoreboard, and then A&M kind of settled in and threw some punches, and as they were throwing punches, that's when Tennessee elected to go to it. So it's going to depend on the game and the matchup, but it's good to know that that's in the bag.
Yes.
If you're a golfer, good to know that that's in the bag. Zakai Ziegler, I've said it a million times this season. I'll continue to say it. I don't think there's another point guard in the country I want over Zakai Ziegler.
When he plays like he did tonight, there's absolutely no question. And it's like, if you're a team playing Tennessee, and it's the previous game for Tennessee had been one of those rare Zakai Ziegler kind of misfires where he just doesn't have it. Doesn't happen very often. You can probably count them on one hand during the course of a season. But when they happen, you just really feel bad for whoever's going to come up next. If you're a Tennessee fan, you don't. But if you're a neutral, or certainly if you support the other team, it's the last thing that you want to see because as competitive as that guy is, he played, 37, 38 minutes tonight, didn't get
35.
taken out till the final couple minutes, it seemed like, and he was begging to go back in the game. Not just because he wanted a triple-double, which he did, but just the way that he makes passes that a lot of other point guards at this level just can't make. His on-ball defense is, I don't know if it's duplicated by any player in the country. The pressure that he puts on the ball for every minute that he's on the floor. And just, I think Buzz Williams said it right. He's the engine. He's the thing that keeps this thing going.
Absolutely. A couple other things before we get out of here. Win number 800 for Rick Barnes, a Hall of Fame career, regardless of what some people want to say.
Yes.
Just a terrific basketball coach, and when asked about it after the game, of course, deflects does not talk about himself. Talks about his players, his coaching staff that he's always had, his family that's always stuck by him, the administrations that he's dealt with, and as a fellow man of Christ, I appreciate how he gives credit to God in these moments as well. So in typical Rick Barnes fashion, a night about him to a certain extent, and deflects and talks about everything else but him.
I think the interesting thing about Rick Barnes is depending on what age you are, like I mean, I'm an older guy, so not super old, but old enough to remember when Rick Barnes was a younger coach and was a guy that not everybody liked. People forget this now. He's like the lovable uncle for everybody in this game, but he was a guy who, you know, was going after Dean Smith. He was at smaller schools trying to kind of get interest going and trying to really kind of had a chip on his shoulder, thought he could go it alone, thought he could do a lot. He was abrasive. And he had to kind of check himself in some ways. His family, I think his daughter in particular helped him with that, his family. And he's kind of become what he's become over time. And it's just that arc is interesting because if you're like, if you're of a certain age, you have to like go YouTube and research to find this stuff because you just think of Rick Barnes from the past, you know, whatever, 15 years or 10 years. And it's just a completely different guy now.
It is. Lastly, Tennessee now tied atop the SEC standings with Alabama. If I'm not mistaken, I technically haven't looked at it, but I believe that is the case. Technically, Tennessee should be in first place alone because it owns the tiebreaker, but for whatever reason, the SEC doesn't want to roll with those rules for whatever reason. Some stupid European soccer stuff right there, if you ask me. But an important 4 games coming up. SEC regular season championship right in front of them. You had to have tonight going into this 4-game gauntlet.
Yeah, and a Chelsea fan would be talking about how bad soccer is.
When's the last time Arsenal won the Champions League?
2000 and never, and 19 and never.
Gotcha.
That would be the last time. But yeah, I mean, this is, everybody's known these final 2 weeks were going to be a gauntlet, right? And before everybody knew what South Carolina was going to be, it was still looked at as a gauntlet. And that was just kind of the one game where you're like, maybe it's not as bad that night. No. I mean, those are 4 quad 1 games now. I mean, I still think Bama would probably be the betting odd to go out there and win the league. When you look at the rest of the schedule, look at Kentucky. My God, when they play the way they played today, who knows what could happen against that bunch? So, I don't know that Tennessee's going to go 4-0 the next 2 weeks, but I do know that if Tennessee plays the way it did in the final 25 minutes of this game tonight, it's the best team in the country or the best team in this league, and has a shout to be one of the best in the country.
Absolutely, and we've got plenty of coverage of everything you need to know about Tennessee basketball up at the site, GoVols 24/7, and certainly we'll continue to have coverage throughout these last 2 weeks of the regular season. He's Wes Rucker, I'm Ben McKee.